Hi, welcome to the step-by-step video for this Halloween Addicts Anonymous project called Putrid Pop. This is actually our 24th meeting of Halloween Addicts Anonymous. It's supposed to be a 12-step program, but obviously we needed a little bit longer to deal with our issues with Halloween. So this video is going to cover start to finish, except for the base coating, because I think you can handle that. But this is what our piece is going to look like. It's a nice, easy surface, no cutouts, no additions, just some stenciling, dry brushing, lining, shading, your normal stuff. And of course, these lovely Halloween decorated wooden beads. So to get started, I figured you didn't need to see me base coat anything. So I went ahead and base coated, and I'll just point out things that we did to prepare for this class. So the handle here was based in sable brown. One coat will do. The purple part is lavender. Again, just a single coat will do. There's a lot of stuff that goes on top of this. The icing is Irish moss. Single coat will do. Our pumpkin is based in spiced pumpkin, and the stem is based in burnt umber. So once you get that all painted in, you give it let it dry, give it a good little sand so you have a smooth surface to paint on. And the only pattern that I applied to start with was the division between the sections on the pumpkin. So we are going to get started painting. All right, we're going to start working on the handle first. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to dry brush highlighting with fawn. Now I like to use a Langnickel short round sable brush for my dry brushing. And if you want to see the technique that I use, there is a video on my YouTube channel that addresses dry brushing. So, but please, if you have a way that you'd like to dry brush, a brush that works for you or a technique that works for you, go ahead and use that. Paint the way you're comfortable painting, okay? So we're going to dry brush some highlighting all over this handle with some fawn. Now I'm using a newer short round brush, so it still has kind of a point to it, but I'm working at wearing that down. So I talked a little bit too long and the paint kind of got stuck in there, so I'm having to scrub really hard to get it out, but that's okay. That's exactly what you want. So don't wash your brush out. We're going to dry brush some brighter highlighting by picking up some warm white. So a little bit lighter value of fawn. And we're going to keep this kind of to the right center. I mean, it doesn't have to go down the center. It can go just a little right of center. So you see, I'm just going to scrub on just a little bit lighter dry brushing. There's still a lot of stuff that goes on top of this. All right, so now you can wash your brush out. We are going to float some shading on our handle with burnt umber. Just a nice soft float of burnt umber, and that's going to go under the purple part and all the way around the outside edge of this stick, this handle. And if you like to mop your floats out, this might be a good place to do that. I tend to do that quite often. It just softens them up. I'm going to go all the way around this outside edge. So I tend to kind of pity pat my floats in there. It's not one consecutive stroke. Not like how I learned when I was just starting, oh so many years ago. So there we go. Quick and easy shade on there. So now what we want to do is we want to take a liner brush. This is a number 2. It's a King Art brush, so it actually to me seems like it's like a number 1 in the royal brushes that I normally use. But what I want to do is I want to line that wood grain on my handle. Now this wood grain, normally we would, when we're doing something to a piece, we're going to follow the shape of the piece. But since this is wood, and this handle was cut out of it, we're just going to keep it going straight up and down. So let me get a little closer. So I am going to start in the middle, and I'm going to stay up on the tip of my liner brush. I'm just going to line, and it's going to be hit and miss. Now when I want a knot hole, I love to do knot holes, I'm going to stop, flatten that liner brush out, and then come back up onto the tip. So there I've made a little knot hole. And to sell it even further, I'm going to come in and I'm going to add little lines around that knot hole. So it gives it the idea that that's a knot hole. So there's quite a bit of wood grain on here. It was a very grainy piece of wood. I would probably limit the number of knot holes. You don't want to get too carried away with knot holes. So again, just stay up on the tip of your brush and just line some start and stop kind of lines. They don't have to be perfect. It's not what we're looking for, because this is wood grain and nature has its way with trees, so it just needs to be a little bit loose and varied. So I do have another knot hole on my piece here, so I'll go ahead and add it. And I'm going to go back in and add those little outlines on either side. Okay, I'm going to turn this over so I can do the other half a little easier. And so that knot hole even got another outline just because I wanted to. And if you look at knot holes, they usually do have several little rings kind of around them. So just quickly add some wood grain. I've got another knot hole over here somewhere. I think I'll make it right there. So anytime I just feel like it, I just stop and kind of flatten that brush down to give me my knot hole. And we're going to make these stand out a little bit more. All right, cool. Our handle has wood grain. So now we're going to line some highlighting here and there on the wood grain, but we're going to especially pay attention to the knot holes, and we're going to do that with thinned warm white. So it's not a lot, just enough to make some of it stand out. So I'm just going to come up, and what I'm doing is going next to the knot hole, between, I'm sorry I got off camera there for a minute, I get concentrating and forget to look. So I'm just going to add little bits of highlight on the wood grain, but especially around those knot holes. And it doesn't have to go everywhere. Just pick and choose a few places to highlight and give that wood grain a little bit different look. All right, we are almost done with the handle, if you can believe that. I'm gonna dry this real quick because I don't want to wipe out that liner work I just did. And if you haven't already bought one, you probably should invest in a Ranger heated craft gun. You can get them on Amazon for like 25 bucks. And I love this thing because it's quiet. It's not so hot that you're going to burn the hair off your hands or anything, but it dries your surface very quickly. So now we want to deepen the shading on those floats under the purple and around the other edge with soft black. So you don't need much, just a little bit. So just blend it out nice. I love soft black. I love a lot of colors, and soft black is one of them. So I need to get that moved across my brush a little bit more. It was staying too much in one place. So I'm just going to deepen that shading under the purple part. And I'm also going to go around the outside edge. And that rounds it out, gives it a little bit more dimension. All right, handle is done. We're going to work on the purple section next. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a piece of punchinello, which is a stencil material that I use quite often on my projects. If you painted with me, you most likely got a piece of this in class. If not, you can buy it on my website. But I just use this quite often to add some interest to the background. So we're going to take this piece of punchinello, our favorite stencil brush, and mine at the present time is Chris Hoy's stencil brush. I really like the size 4. And we are going to use some warm white. So load your brush with warm white. Now when I say load your brush, I mean pick up some paint and scrub it around on your palette and then wipe it off on your towel. You don't want a whole lot of paint in this brush because you don't want this stenciling to be really, really bright, and you don't want it to be bleed out under the stencil. So I'm just going to gently stencil some random clusters of dots, which is one of my sayings that I use in my pattern packets. And they don't have to line up. You don't want them to look like little soldiers. Unless you do want them to look like little soldiers, then you can just go ahead and line them up, line away. So I'm just gonna kind of the bottom half of this thing, and if the dots overlap, that's perfectly fine. So I'm just gonna stencil some of these dots with warm white all over the bottom half. So the next thing I want to do is not wash my brush out. I just want to pick up some purple petal, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but this is going to go up in between those little drips, and it's also going to overlap into the white area. So just a little too much paint in there. I didn't listen to my instructions, but it's going to be just fine. I'm going to get up into that drip area, and I'm going to come down over that white, and I'm going to come down even a little further over the white just to kind of blend those two areas together. So this has just a tint of purple, so it's a little bit different than just the straight warm white. And I don't know if you noticed, but I like to do my stencil brush in like a little circle. I don't pounce. I tend to get nicer stenciling done if I just kind of scrub it around in a circle. So reload as often as you need to, but pay attention to wiping that brush out so you don't get a glob of paint. All right. And I'm just going to kind of stencil willy-nilly wherever I want with this purple petal. I want to add a little bit more through this area here. And of course, the spider web and the spider cover this, so I really don't need to bump it up that much. But I'm just going to kind of just stencil on top of my stenciling just to break it up and make it more fuzzy. But I still want to be able to see that lavender in the background. So don't wipe that out completely. And I think I'm going to call that done. The next thing we want to do is we want to get out some dioxazine purple, and we're going to float shading all the way around this purple area. So just a nice soft float of Diox purple. Blend it out. You don't want a line of Diox purple, you want a float of Diox purple. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up inside these drips, where these drips are, and just touch that floating up in the top of those drips. Just kind of making it easy on myself. The Diox purple looks, it really makes it look nice. Last strip. All right, so the next place I'm going to go is I'm going to go down the sides and across the bottom. And then I'll come back and float shading around those drips. You notice when I come to a corner, I always like to kind of walk the color out a little bit and deepen the shading in those corners. And this is a good place to throw your brushes around. No, this is a good place for you to do a little mopping to blend that corner float out a little bit. I'm going across the bottom, and here I have another little corner. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more paint so I can deepen that corner a little bit. All right. And now I'm going to do around those drips. Let's start on this side because it's a little drier. And I'll probably do one side of each drip and then come back and do the other side. Just so I'm not wiping floats out, because we all know how much I love to float. Getting it done. Right. Takes a little more concentration to go around these floats, so I don't talk much. Okay, I'm going to turn this over, maybe. Yeah, I'm going to turn it like this so I can float the other side. And what ends up happening is this little area right here in the top of each drip gets floated again, and so it deepens it a little bit, and that's what we want. A little bit darker up in there. Okay, so there you go, dioxazine purple shading all the way around that purple area. So the next step will be to put the pattern on for the spider web. You don't need to put the pattern on for the spider yet, just the spider web. All right, let's do a little bit of a spider web. You're going to need warm white and a liner brush, and we're just going to line the web, the arms, and the little curved things that go in between. I don't know what they're called, but we're just gonna, with your liner brush, this again is a number 2 King Art, and I'm just gonna line. Now you want it to be thick enough because I'm sorry, we actually do touch a little bit of shading on this thing and next to it, so need it to be a little thicker than a thin line. So I'm going to do the straight arms first. Just checking to make sure you couldn't see the top of my head. Sometimes I get so close to the piece that you get to see the part in my hair. But not right now. Okay, 2 arms. And then I'm going to use again, the warm white and this little liner brush, and I'm going to add the little cross things. Okay, and you thought a spider web would just be lining that white in there. Oh no, I have to make it complicated. And let's add, I should probably start at the bottom. I can do both. That way. All right. This was a busy spider. He made lots of crossbar things on his web. A couple more and we can call that part done. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to hit this with the hair dryer, and then we're going to come in with some shading on the purple background next to the web. And I know you're going, what? But that's what I did, so you get to do it too. So just a side load float of dioxazine purple, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to float on the background next to those long straight parts, and you can go you can go right over those crossbars just to make it easy. So, and I'm going down both sides. but it does help make the spider web pop off the background a little bit better. I think you can see that already. So I'm turning this guy around so I can get the other side. And if you don't feel like doing this, you don't have to. I can't see your piece, so whatever you want to do is fine. I realize sometimes I get carried away with the little details. And so now we're going to come to these curved sections, and we're going to float dioxazine purple underneath. You don't have to do it on both sides, just underneath them. So just go down each section and add a little float of dioxazine purple underneath each of those little curved crossbars. You know, I know some people don't like spiders. If you don't like spiders, you could not put them on here. You could put like a little bat or candy corn or something. Feel free to alter it if you just don't like spiders. Don't let it keep you from painting the project just because you don't like that one little element. Just change it to a different Halloween element. Almost done, but I think you can see how much that helps to pop that spider web off of the background. A couple more crossbars and we can call this part of it done. We have one more thing to do, I believe. So you're going to get out a little bit of desert turquoise. Okay, so with desert turquoise, we are going to touch just a little bit of color, like shading, but this is a totally different color. But I want to do it right at where these curved things connect. I'm just going to, or go behind this icing, I'm just going to touch just the tip of my brush that's been corner loaded with desert turquoise. And I'm also going to do it on the outside edges. So I'm going to go through and do one side and then come back and do the other side. It's basically just tapping down your brush and leaving a little bit of that blue where those cross sections meet the straight lines, and also where they come off the edge of the piece. All right, so now I'm going to turn this over and do the other side. And I even touch it where it goes behind the icing here. And that just adds another little dimension to that thing. And also what it does is it brings this desert turquoise color into another part of the design. So it's always kind of nice to have, if you're going to use a color, to make sure you use it in a few different places on the design, even if it's just a little touch like this. So I'm going to dry this really quick, because I want to float shading around the edges of the pop again, the popsicle again, with dioxazine purple, and that's going to go right over where you just touched that desert turquoise, but it's okay, a little bit of it will shine through. So come back with Diox purple, and this time I'm not going to go up into these little icing drips. I'm just going to start down the side here and come around. Across the bottom. And back up to the icing on the other side. All right, so now let this dry. Let's put the pattern on for our spider and we'll get to work on him. The first thing we want to do to our spider is we want to base him in, just his head and his body, with graphite. Not his legs. We'll line those on later. But for right now, we just want to paint in his head. And it does not have to be opaque. We got stuff going on top of it. I always like to encourage you when you're painting a design to look at what you're base painting and decide, is there enough stuff on top of it that I don't have to have a completely solid coat? Most of the time you don't, because you've got dry brushing, highlighting, shading. You know, you could have some design on top of it. So it saves you a little time. I know how we all love to base paint. So I'm just using a round brush to base this guy in. And that was with graphite. All right, let's dry this guy. And we are going to dry brush some highlighting. Let me get closer to our little spider. Okay, so we are going to dry brush some highlighting in his head and in his body with desert turquoise. And it's just going to go in the center of the head and the center of the body. And here's where we're bringing that desert turquoise in from the little shading we did on the sections. And then don't wash out your brush. We're going to pick up a little warm white and dry brush a brighter highlight. And this is going to stay more in the upper right side of the head and the body. Okay, so that gives him a little bit of dimension, makes him look a little round. So we're going to float shading on the head and the body and then paint the legs with lamp black. And basically I am going to float shading just down both sides. I'm not going to really separate the head from the body. So just go down both sides with a float of lamp black. So I'd start at the top of his head and then just bring it on down in his body and kind of stop at his bum. Let me turn this guy over so I can get the other side. Same idea. If you lost the shape of your body a little bit, it's not quite oval enough for you, this is where you can fix it. All right. Liner brush in lamp black, you are going to paint his legs. And again, they need to have a little bit of width to them because they're spider legs. And we are going to line a highlight on them. So lamp black in your liner brush, you just want to line those legs. Now the tips of them are kind of pointy. And then as you get closer to the body, they can get thicker. I didn't really mean to go into his body quite that much. So a nice pointy end, or a kind of pointy, apparently. And then a little bit thicker. All right, 4 more legs. These are a little more involved. Legs, they have a little bit more joints. And let's do that last one. Right, he's looking very spidery now. I'm going to turn him around so I can get that point on the end a little easier. And if it doesn't have a point, it's all right. It'll be okay. Okay, I ran out of paint there. Some days it just doesn't want to work. Like that got really wide. So I'm going to clean that one up a little bit. So see, there's always a way to fix things if they're not quite exactly what you want. So I'm just going to clean off the paint I don't want with a flat brush and some water. Alright, so now we have our spider. We're going to line a highlight on the head, the body, and the legs with warm white. The highlights on the head and the body are like little comma strokes, but if they don't look like comma strokes on yours, it's okay. And they're a little bit larger. And then on the legs, it's just a line. You just line a little highlight. Don't fill up the whole leg. Just a little line. It doesn't even have to go all the way to the end. All right, getting there. Just a few more things to do to him. You'd think I'd be done now. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to add a float of desert turquoise in the left side of his body. It's kind of like a reflective float in that it's not going right on the very edge of his body. I want it just a hair inside the edge. So just a quick float. And see how I'm staying off the edge. I'm keeping a little rim of black or graphite there. And that's in the left side of his head and his body. We're going to come back with our liner brush and some thin dioxazine purple. And we're going to line a shadow on the background next to the body, head and body. It's on the background to the left side. So I'm just going to take my liner brush and some thin diox purple, and I'm just going to line a shadow. You can go right over his legs. It'll be okay. And then I'm also going to line a little bit of this shadow under his legs. So not the complete leg, just kind of underneath each leg. You want to add a little shadow to pop him on top of the spider web in the background. So just a quick little shadow. And now we want to get out just a touch of country red. And I'm going to dry brush just a little tint of country red on his bum. I didn't want a dot. I just wanted it to be like a hint of country red. And it's just going to be on his bum. Nice soft touch of country red on his little bottom. And there you go. We have our spider done. We're going to move on to the icing next. So, on the icing, we're going to dry brush highlighting first with Margarita. And of course, we're going to do a lighter highlight too, so don't wash your brush out when you're done. And this Margarita highlighting is basically going to go all over, just to brighten up that icing. You should probably be using a smaller brush. Okay. So all over, down into those drips. Just wherever you can fit your brush, dry brush some highlighting in there with Margarita. This one has a skinny little neck, so I had to be a little more careful. And as this Margarita dries, it kind of tones down a little bit, and that's why we're going to pick up some warm white on our dirty brush, and we're going to dry brush brighter highlighting. And this is going to stay mainly in the center area and down the center of the drips. So as you get lighter, you cover a little bit smaller area. So I'm just staying down the center of each of those little drips. And then I am gonna go up in here, but I'm not gonna cover as much area as I did with the Margarita the first time through. All right, starting to get some dimension. So we have some little sprinkles on the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 of them, but you can put more if you like. Just keep in mind that we are going to float some shading and add a highlight to those sprinkles. And so I'm going to use a stencil from Chris Hoy called the Painter's Pal. And I'm going to add my little sprinkles with Joyful Pink. Let me see what size sprinkle I added. All right. It's not the smallest, but the next smallest. So Joyful Pink. This should take just a few minutes, not even a few minutes, just a few seconds to add yourself some sprinkles on here. So second smallest. And if you want to put more, you can. It's your popsicle. Oops, got a little carried away there. I know I could tape it off, but I'm too lazy. And 3, 4, 5, just wherever you want them. Almost did a bigger one. I don't need that. I need one more somewhere. Maybe right smack dab in the middle of these, I think. There we go. So I've got 7. You can put on more, you can put on less, whatever you decide. But the Chris's Painter's Pal, you can see I use it a lot, makes it quick and easy. All right, so let's dry those really quick, just to make sure. And you're going to need some red violet, just a dot. This is one of those colors that I don't carry throughout the whole thing. So red violet. I'm just going to touch a little bit of shading in the bottom of each of those little sprinkles. So just a touch of red violet in whatever I decide is the bottom. Even these little sprinkles are a little bit more work than you would imagine. And I'm going to float a highlight in the top of each sprinkle with very well blended out warm white. So blend it out good. When you think you've blended it out enough, blend it out again. So just a touch of a highlight in the top of each sprinkle. And if you're wondering, yes, I do lay awake at night thinking of things I can make you do. So the we want to line a shadow under each sprinkle. And I think you can see that if you get out your large picture of the top of the top. And that's just going to be lined on with thin black forest green. And basically, let's get a little closer. You just line underneath. So this really, you do have to pay attention to where the, well, as much as you want to, where the bottom, where you're going to make the bottom. Because sometimes it'll be the long side, and sometimes it'll be the short side. And sometimes it will be a little of both. But that just sinks them into the icing a little bit. And then they each get a little dot of warm white as a highlight. Now I would dot with my brush so that it would dry faster than if you did it with your stylus. So it's just a little dot in the top. Obviously it doesn't really need to be a dot. Just a little touch of warm white in the top. So we are going to come back and float some shading on the icing. And that's going to go all the way around, all the drips across the top and around the pumpkin. So I'm going to want to get in there and just dry those little dots real quick. And that shading is going to be done with black forest green. So I'm going to back out a little bit. And it's just a side load float of black forest green. So I'll probably start here and go around my pumpkin. Isn't that pretty on that green? I think it's a great color for shading on Irish moss. And I am going to go ahead and mop that, especially where I stopped and started. I'm going to go inside the drips. So I'll probably do the bottom and then come up one side for now. And you're going to wonder why I do the next thing after I'm spending all this time floating. Black forest green. I got kind of a water line there, which you couldn't see because I was off camera, and I apologize. But you know what? It'll be okay. Okay. Basically, I'm going to end up going around all the edges with black forest green. I'm going to come back in here and finish off these. More drip, I think. And then I'm just going to come around the top. Oh, and I need to go down this one side here. So now I'm going to go around the top. I'm going to start from here and just come around that top edge. All right, so we're going to come back and we're going to add a float of margarita in the bottom of each of these drips. And that's where I said, you're going to go, what? Because you just shaded it. But trust me, it works. So just a nice float of margarita in the bottom of each one of those drips. This helps you clean up your drips a little bit if they got a little too wonky. Of course, wonky is good. It's a Halloween piece. And you're going to thank me that I only put 5 little drips and didn't get carried away. So there, a quick float of margarita in the bottom of each of those. I want to dry that real quick because I'm going to come back and I'm going to float a brighter highlight with warm white. And just like we did on the spider, this float's going to stay just a hair above the edge. So warm white, and just stay a hair off the edge. And I'm in no hurry to get this float done. I want it to be very controlled so that I do stay up off the edge. So I'm not trying to whip it out. All right. I say all right a lot. It's my new go-to word in videos, apparently. So we're going to dry brush a little more highlighting in the ends of the drips with warm white. We just want to brighten up those little, where it would be gathered, you know, making a little ball. So I'm going to dry out my dry brush. And I'm going to pick up warm white. And so I'm just going to concentrate in the ends of the drips. So a little bit there. This one's a little bigger. So you can kind of see that it's making them look a little more rounded, a little more drippy, for lack of better words. My vocabulary is not very big. And if I can't think of a word, I make one up. So there is a stroke highlight of warm white on each of those drips. And it changes sides. So on it's going to go on the left side on those first 3, and in the right side on the final 2. And it's just like we did on the spider's body. It's just a little stroke to bump up that highlight a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect, thankfully, right? Obviously. All right. So just one more thing to do on this icing. And we are going to come back with our dry brush. And we're going to deepen the shading by dry brushing it, especially in these tops where the top curve of the drips. And that's going to be with Black Forest Green. And if there's someplace else you want to deepen that shading, feel free. Like I might come in here and just round this out a little bit more here and here. But mostly I'm going to concentrate on deepening the shading at the top of the curves of the drips. And that just helps make it look like it's got more dimension. I don't know, it just does a little something something that helps with the illusion of Black Forest Green to deepen those curves. Doesn't take much. And then you can wash your brush out. We're going to work on the pumpkin next. So I'm going to grab those colors and I'll be back. Okay, on our pumpkin, let's do the stem first. Since we have these colors out on our palette already, and before they dry on us, let's go ahead and float a highlight on the right side of the stem with Margarita. And then the shading is going to go on the left side of the stem with Lamp Black. Just a nice, well blended out float of Lamp Black. It's going to get covered up by your beads anyway, so doesn't really matter. We are going to dry brush highlighting on the sections of our pumpkin with Moon Yellow. So I'm just going to dry brush Moon Yellow. Looks like I need a little bit more. I took a little too much out. So we're just going to dry brush Moon Yellow through the center of each section. And then don't wash your brush out. Just go ahead and pick up some warm white on that dirty brush. And let's dry brush just a little bit brighter highlight in the top of each section. All right, you can wash your brush out now. And we are going to float highlighting on each section with Moon Yellow. I'm going to float the outside edge, and it's going to go on really bright. But don't panic, it'll be okay. And then I'm going to come and do the middle section. I'm going to turn this guy over so I can do the same thing to the other side. And to the center. See how much it's toned down already? All right. We're going to float shading first with Country Red. If you painted pumpkins with me, you know we always go through these stages. So I'm going to go on the outside sections next to the center section with a float of Country Red. I always like to add a little bit of red into my pumpkins. And let's turn it around and get the other side. Let's dry those. We have a few more floats to do here. I'm also going to float Country Red in the top and the bottom of each section. So I'm going to start up the side a little bit and float in the bottom of each section. So I'm going to start up the side a little bit, come down across the bottom, and then I'm going to come back up the side on the center section. I'm going to get my mop, soften that a little bit. And then I'm going to do this last section. Looks like I need to clean my mop. And I'm going to do the same thing in the tops. Down the side a little bit. And across the middle section. All right, so I've done top and bottom of all the sections. And now we're going to come back, and everywhere that you just shaded with Country Red, you're going to shade again with Burnt Umber. So that means I'm going to go next to the center section, and that's going right on top of that Burnt Umber that you floated. But it makes it look so pretty. And I'm going to go the other side. And we're also going to go in the tops and the bottom of each section. So I'm going to do, I guess I'll be on camera, would be nice. Again, starting up on the side a little bit. To this side. And the other section on the bottom. And then we'll do the same thing to the top sections. All right, there you go. So now we can put the pattern on for our face. So put the pattern on, I'll be back. Okay, pattern's on. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give my little guy some nice round cheeks by dry brushing some Country Red. Cheeks are going to set right at the ends of his mouth a little bit above. So nice, bright, round cheeks. You want to be able to see them. We're going to paint the eyes and line the mouth with lamp black. I am having a tough time. Got the shakes today. Don't know why. And yes, of course, one eye is bigger than the other. If you want to make them the same size, that's fine. And the mouth, we're going to do that line. And you think of it like kind of like barbed wire for his mouth. So I'm going to do the line, and it starts into his cheek a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide where I want to put my little barbed wire. I'm going to do 2 little dashes like this. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull. I want a thinner brush. Let's go smaller. So I'm just going to pull some little prongs out. 4 of them from each of those little hash marks that we did. We're going to go ahead and line a highlight on that mouth while we're at it, and that's just with thin warm white. So I'm going to line along the straight line. I'm going to stop when I get to those little barbed wire things. I'm just going to line a little highlight there, and then I'm going to highlight those little hash marks that I did. And if you want, you can get in and line a highlight on those little barbs, but I don't think I really did. I'm going to line a shadow above each eye and below the mouth with thinned burnt umber. I'm going to go around the top of each eye, and this just kind of sets the eye into the pumpkin a little bit. So it's not just laying on top. So I'm lining around the top of each eye. And I'm going to go under basically just the straight part of the mouth. So we need to come back with our dry brush. And dry brush just a touch of moon yellow in the top of each eye. It's not a lot. So just a touch of moon yellow in the top of each eye. He's starting to look spooky now. We are going to line inside the eye on the left edge with moon yellow, kind of giving it a cut edge, a little bit of a glow. And it's inside the eye on the left side. Just a quick line like that. Now his eyes are starting to come to life. Again, with our liner brush, we're going to paint that crescent-shaped stroke in the bottom of each eye. And here again, I stay off of the very bottom. I stay above the bottom edge a little bit. But liner brush and desert turquoise. And that's going to go, it is going to go kind of over that yellow you just did. But I'm just going to line. I always like to line the bottom line first, and then I come back and finish that stroke. So just a blue crescent-shaped stroke in the bottom of each eye. Because every pumpkin has pretty blue eyes. So don't wash that brush out. Just pick up a little bit of warm white, kind of blend it on your palette, and line a highlight through the center of that desert turquoise stroke. There are some little pupils in each eye, and those are painted with lamp black. And you may think they won't show up, but they do. So just little ovals of lamp black in each eye. If you can get away with a set down, that's even better, easier. So while we let those little pupils dry a little bit, he does have some crazy little eyebrows, and those are just lined on with burnt umber. And they just set right above that shadow that you put on his eye. And now what we want to do is we want to come back and add a little highlight dot in the top of each pupil. So my friends, that is your Putrid pot. Now if you wanted to make it even more putrid, you could add other things to it if you wanted to, but this is what I created for you. So the only thing you have left to do is to sign the piece, varnish it, and you can add a jute or a wire hanger and add yourself some little Halloween beads. And I use jute on this one, but I think on the next one I'm going to add wire, just so it's a little bit more sturdy, but I thought jute might be cute. And I made a rhyme. Anyway, so just add some Halloween beads for a hanger, and you're good to go. There's another Halloween piece for you to add to your decorations. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.